Good morning, Subham. A very good morning. I hope all of you have gone through the things that we discussed yesterday because it was important. And we have covered almost all the important relationships with which India is concerned, and India wants to continue with a good relationship. Good morning, Sazil, Dhananjay. I'm doing fine. I'm healthy. Good morning, Avtar. So, I was telling you that most of the relations which needed our more focus have been covered till date. Now we'll be looking at those relations which are still not fully established, with whom we are not cooperating much. But there is a desire by both the parties to enhance the relationship in order to dominate the geopolitics of the world. India is of economic interest to most of the countries. So everyone wants to have good relationship with India. And there are some of the countries who are important to us. So we'll be looking at those relations as well. Good morning, Asu. So yesterday we finished India, Israel, Palestine. Okay. And now today I'll be starting with an important grouping. Of course, we have discussed the relationship with some of these countries. Good morning, Mani. But now we'll be focusing on a grouping which in itself is important. And as far as we Indians are concerned, we think that the Western nations are important, right? But if we look at the relationship that has been developed between India and Western countries, it's not been a relationship of full engagements. It's been a relationship of some of the doubts. And as historically they have been, they still are not on the same page with India in many of the aspects, because still they are focusing more about trade and investment. And whenever India is having a relationship, we are not only focusing on the investment or trade relationship. We want to develop a relationship which goes far beyond that. We want to engage them with our culture, our people, and of course, some of the points where global agenda converges. So here we'll start with GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council. Mani, I am okay, I am all good. The vaccination thing didn't impact me much. I didn't have any fever or any other side effects at this point in time. The very first day, of course, when I got jabbed, I was having some kind of issues, but today I'm all good. Okay. So now we'll be discussing India and Gulf Cooperation Council. So this is basically a grouping of 6 nations, okay, of which we have already discussed our relations with UAE and Saudi Arabia in detail. And looking at this grouping as well, these 2 countries, of course, were more important. And we are focusing on this topic only because recently there was a news that India is initiating again the talks about free trade agreement with these grouping. Okay. Good morning, Amit, Devbrat. A very good morning. So now let's start with this grouping. So this grouping also has Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman and Qatar. Okay. So basically we have to focus on these countries. We'll be focusing on this relationship. Okay. And of course, you know, this is the area which is important with respect to the oil resources. And as we had discussed that India imports more than 85% of the petroleum requirements, right? A very good morning, Abhishek. So we'll be looking at this grouping. And we are discussing this group only because it was in news recently, right? I have given priority to this group only because there were talks about revival of the free trade agreement discussions very recently in this month only. Okay. So if we talk about this grouping, why this grouping was formed in the first place. So this grouping was not formed because they have common resources. The main agenda of forming this grouping in 1981 was to shield itself from Iraq-Iran war. These two major countries of the region, Iran and Iraq, were fighting a war. And these 6 countries do not wanted to get impacted by that and wanted to save their territory because both the countries were aggressive and any of these countries being looked as taking sides could have been at loss. So these 6 countries started a grouping which later led to a very good socio-economic development of all the regions because it was driven by UAE and Saudi Arabia, who happen to be more prosperous as compared to others. Okay. So basically why this grouping was formed? In 1981, Iran-Iraq war. These countries wanted to shield themselves from this event. Okay? They do not wanted to get embroiled into this rivalry. So the grouping was formed. So we'll be directly looking at the things which are of importance to us. And as I had said, that this is a region which has resources in the form of oil resources, of course, GCC. They have oil resources. The oil resources are important, and it is to the tune of 30% of all the reserves of the world. Whatever oil reserves are there, this place hosts around 80%. So of course it is important. And this area is again important because it hosts many military bases. Okay, so this is a region which hosts many military bases. Why? As again there is some problem with this, but we'll try to discuss this thing. Since yesterday there was some problem with the transformer, and since then there are a lot of fluctuations in the electricity. So this problem is there, but we'll try to cover each and every aspect. So you have been writing, and I want you to mention, write this thing. GCC has 30% of all the proven oil reserves of the world. In 1981, they had formed. Amit, it will take some time before we make arrangements for that. So maybe for some time, if you can manage, because mostly we do not have to look at much of the representation, the diagrams. The discussion is more important and notes are more important. Okay, so we'll be doing that only. So we'll be doing that. So note down, 30% of the global proven oil reserves are in this place. The second point that I was talking about is they host many of the military bases. They host many of the military bases as surrounded by terror groups. As surrounded by terror groups. As surrounded by terror groups. So Shaksham, date of formation, it is very highly unlikely that exact date will be asked, but still as far as I can remember, it was in this month only. So India offered this thing. Okay, so maybe you can check, it was formed in May only. So the talks of free trade agreement again is started. So 1981, the year I had suggested. If you want exact date, you need to have a look at it. UPSC ain't is going to ask such type of question. Of course, if you are appearing for some state services, then maybe you'll require that. So it was in the month of May only. So I said it was in news, right? So if you want the exact date, please check over Google. It will make things more easier for you. In 1981. And as far as its headquarters are concerned, it's in UAE. It is in Saudi Arabia, not UAE. It is in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. They host many military bases as surrounded by. They host many military bases as surrounded by terrorist groups or terrorist outfits. Surrounded by terrorist groups. So, of course, it is important. And the other problem that this region is facing, why it is in news, because this region is basically rich in oil reserves. And while discussing Saudi Arabia and UAE, we had talked about this thing that Even countries like India are focusing on renewable energy, and very soon India has also plans of getting 40% of its energy from renewable resources. So of course these places are going to face problem. इन जगहों क्या होने वाली दिक्कत होने वाली है. They won't be able to sustain their economy. So such groupings of course are looking at countries like India so that they can diversify their business with the amount of money they have already generated by selling these petroleum resources. Okay? And the discovery of the new resources by many of the countries like America, which has discovered shale gas. So such countries have limited demand of petroleum. Of course, some of the countries are moving towards nuclear energy generation. So the problem is there as well. Okay? So many of the countries, like we had discussed, are now focusing on other countries. So if you want to write this point, you can write as the world is looking towards, as the world is looking forward to, as the world is looking forward to alternative energy sources, alternative energy sources, the nations of this grouping, the nations of this grouping is looking forward to, diversify, is looking forward to diversify their investments, looking forward to diversify their investments. Okay? Now if we talk about the relationship with these countries, then if we talk about economic relationship, I want you to write first about economic relationship. They are one of the biggest investors in India. So these nations are, just write down, not much things to be understood in this relationship. It was in news, and any of the events, whatever is happening, will be important in future. These nations, note it down, these nations are important investors. These nations are important investors, for India. Like we had discussed, for example, UAE and Saudi Arabia are building refinery in Ratnagiri in Maharashtra. For example, UAE and Saudi Arabia are building a refinery in Ratnagiri in Maharashtra. While reading Saudi Arabia and UAE, we had seen this example, right? We had discussed this thing. And also UAE is developing the strategic reserves for India. We also discussed this. So you can write the other point. Nearly 40% of India's crude oil import, nearly 40% of India's crude oil import comes from this region. Nearly 40% of India's crude oil comes from this region. Nearly 40% of all the crude oil reserves in India comes from this region. Adi, this is what I said, like they are diversifying the investments. They are focusing on some of the infrastructure projects. Let's say if they are developing refinery in India, they will earn from that. If some of these are investing in strategic oil reserves, of course they'll receive money. If some of them are giving money to some of the startups based in India or rest part of the world, they'll get money. They are also investing hugely in renewable resources in some of the countries so that their sources of income will remain intact. So they are taking many steps to ensure that even if the world shifts to only renewable energy, by that time they will have investment in other countries which will keep on giving them enough money to sustain themselves, because they are also aware that for long they won't be able to sustain with petroleum resources. Yeah, Avtar, diversifying their investment means investing in some other things from only petroleum resources. Okay, they will create housing projects in some countries. They'll invest in stock markets of other countries. They'll invest in companies in other IT, maybe service sector. So they'll not solely depend on petroleum. This is called as diversifying. Diversifying the investment is a purely economic construct. Okay. So the other point of convergence, apart from the economic aspect, is security. Security of the region. So India and GCC, write down, in security, India and GCC are cooperating on the issues of terrorism, on the issues of terrorism and share intelligence with each other, and share intelligence with each other, and share intelligence with each other. India also has various joint exercises India also have various joint exercises with some of these countries, Next point. India also, the other point, India also avoids India also avoids commenting on India also avoids commenting on the conflicts happening in that region. Commenting on the conflicts happening in that region. So India basically has a policy of non-interference. Okay, India chooses not to speak about the conflicts, whatever is happening in the region, and India wants them to take care of the things themselves. And of course, diaspora, we know wherever we can get employment, we Indians will definitely move to that place. If there is any economic opportunity in any part of the world, we Indians shall reach there and show to them that we can participate as a workforce, right? So we have diaspora links as well. So you can talk about the diaspora. Okay, the next head is diaspora. So almost 55 lakh people from India are residing there. Okay, for various work related things, almost 55 lakhs people, and they are contributing a lot towards the economic development of that region. Okay, so our diaspora is helping with economic development. As we have both skilled and unskilled labor forces, these countries require our skill. So, of course, India is helping these countries. And now we have to follow this thing, this news, because very recently, very recently, what is happening? India is thinking of reviving the free trade agreement talks on request of UAE. Okay, UAE has recently requested India, when these GCC countries were planning to have the celebration of their grouping, the yearly celebration that will happen in May. So UAE proposed that they should have again the talks with UAE, which was stopped, right? This FTA talks started in 2006 and was halted in 2008. Okay, it was the year when the world was grappling with the economic crisis because of the banking bubble that happened in USA. So UAE has approached India for this thing. Already India had figured out 1100 products. Okay, already India had figured out 1100 products that can be exported to this region. So we have already done the homework. We also wanted to have a good relationship with this region because they are having a lot of money and they can invest a lot in India. And amongst these, UAE is the biggest importer and exporter for India. So of course, UAE came with the proposal because it can further benefit. So if we talk about the exports that India is doing now, the major exports, the major items of export to this region, the gems and jewelry. They are very fond of this thing. And when it comes to finished products, India is a big producer. We also supply electrical machinery, of course, apparels. India is also supplying some of the apparels. And we also supply some of the mineral fuels. We also supply some of the mineral fuels. And this is very, very beneficial to India. If we talk about in terms of money, okay, if we talk about in terms of money, it fetches India a whopping amount of $80.5 billion. Apparels is simply clothes. Proteus? Clothings, the bright clothings that people wear, or maybe some of the things, carpets, related to clothing only. Okay, apparels. So this gives India 80.6 billion. So a huge amount. So of course, free trade agreements can help India because these are not the countries which are producing many of the things, right? They are mostly petroleum countries. So you have to follow this news. It will appear in the newspapers again and again. And this value is for financial year 21. From April 2020 to 21. This is the financial year which has given so much money. So do follow this news. It will keep again appearing in the newspaper. Note it down fast. Then we'll move to one other important region. I hope everybody has noted this down. So we'll now look at one of the most important areas which were always a talking point in the geopolitics of the world. Since US became a dominant country, all the writers of USA, all the intellectuals of USA always talked about a region which was associated with Russia earlier, part of that region, which was USSR. This was called by literally many names. It was called Heartland. It was called Rimland. Okay? So, every major country of the world is still have plans for this region, because this region is also resource-rich region. So now we'll look at the relationship of India with Central Asia. Okay? Now we'll be focusing on one of the most geopolitically important regions of the world, that is Central Asia. Every major country, like I said, has an important policy framework for this region. Okay? So we are talking about a region which is attached to this Caspian Sea, and which is also a close neighbor to India, which was directly once related to India. Okay? Before independence, it was touching the boundaries of India. And this region is important because it is surrounded by China, Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. But these countries do not meddle themselves with any other country. Okay? They basically have an independent policy. So a rough diagram to understand the makeup of these countries. Okay? So somewhat the region is like this. Not the exact diagram, but still you'll have a brief idea about this region. Okay? So it is an important region. So draw this map. Okay, this is the place we are talking about. And I'll show you how it is very relevant to India as well. We are here, okay? And this is the region which is surrounded by, this is India, and this is Pakistan. Here we have Afghanistan. Here we have China. Okay? So this region is important. This is the 8th largest country of the world. India is 7th. You must be aware. So it is very much attached to Tajikistan. And this country, why this is important? Because it is the only country where India is planning to hold its military base. We already have a air base in Tajikistan, but India want a full-fledged army base here. And this country doesn't have much of an issue as well. And this also comes under the flying zone of Russia, our friendly country. Okay, so we do not have much of a problem with this. This is Turkmenistan. Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. Okay, so this region is very, very important for India. And who are fighting for this region? Everyone. Everyone is fighting for this region. Be it China, be it Russia, be it USA. And this was previously part of USSR. So the historical ties are not much of relevance. When USSR was disintegrated in 1991, this region took shape, took form. Okay, make it fast, then I'll talk about the rest. Draw it fast. So the relative position, of course, gives you a glimpse why it is important to India. I hope everybody has drawn this thing. So this is a region where USA promotes a specific targeted region which each influential country wants to claim stakes on. USA promotes Greater Central Asia policy. Okay, USA is focusing on the Greater Central Asia policy. Russia calls it part of the Greater Eurasia policy. They have specific policies for this region. And of course, India is pursuing Connect Central Asia policy. This region is part of the so-called heartland and rimland. Okay? So this heartland and rimland was a policy framework used by USA You need not go into details of this thing. But these two policies, of course, are part of geography optional. People will, with geography optional, will have to focus on this region. Okay? And this heartland policy of USA or rimland policy of USA was based on the fact that if this is the region which can actually, when it was part of Soviet, okay, so this was the region which has the potential of dethroning USA as a superpower because of the resources this region has. So you don't need to know the details, you just need to use such terms, heartland, rimland, while writing your answers. You can use this because this word is popular. Many of the things we avoid to take words, but these words are very, very popular, so you can write that this region is part of heartland and rimland. Okay? So note it down. And like I said, these regions became independent, came into existence. These regions came into existence after disintegration of USSR. So you need to focus on. And when in 1991 they came into being, India established diplomatic relations. But we could not engage much, right? We did not engage much because we were not even aware of what we can do. The only thing was like in 1992, 92 to 97. This was an important time when India was engaged with Tajikistan. Civil war in Tajikistan. So India created an air base to check Pakistani influence. So Tajikistan had a friendly relations with India. Pakistan was funding terrorism in this region. So basically India created an air base to desist Pakistan from doing so. But not much of relationship developed in this region. And in 2012, a clear-cut policy was devised by India to ensure that India came up with look north policy. And this look north policy emphasized on 4 C's. four C's. So what these four C's are? And this region is important. It will stay in news. It will appear again and again in news, and you'll have to follow this. Okay? So we decided to establish consulates from where, as we were discussing in some other relationship with Israel, consulates were created in Mumbai, which were providing visas and all. So such for consular access to our people, we focused on consulars, we focused on connectivity, we focused on commerce, the business, and we focused on community, the diaspora. So these were the themes on which we wanted to engage with Central Asia. This is our extended neighborhood, okay? The extended neighborhood where we recognized that relationships are basically threefold. Historically, we recognize the geocultural relations, we recognize the geopolitical relations. Okay? We focused on geocultural, geopolitical, and of course economics is the part. So geoeconomics, the importance of the region since then has been focused on these three. And India was convinced that if we engage our extended neighborhood geoculturally, geopolitically, and geoeconomically, then only we can have some stakes in this region which is being targeted by all the major powers of the world. And like I said, India has a specific policy of Connect Central Asia policy. So India was focusing on this region. Now we'll look at some of the relationship. Note it down. And basically this region is also important with respect to some of the energy needs of the country, with respect to some of the defense related needs of the country, with respect to access to other resource regions of the country. Okay, so main aspects are these only. So first we'll talk about the energy aspect. Because as we have seen, the petroleum resources are easily accessible to India. But lately India has been focusing on the nuclear resources as well. We are focusing on the nuclear resource, and this is the region which has a good amount of nuclear reserves. So India wants a share in this nuclear resource. So basically, two countries, if we talk about, who can provide uranium to India, this is the major interest of India in this region. all of these countries are important. Kazakhstan always was with India in this respect, and it has already signed an agreement and providing us with uranium. Okay. And the other country which is supporting India with uranium is Uzbekistan. Okay. So these two countries are the focal points with respect to energy resources. They are providing energy to India in the form of first country, what we have nuclear deals with these two countries. Okay. We are having nuclear deals. These are supplying us with this thing. We are also looking forward to the oil pipeline from this region, the TAPI project. This was in news many a times, and this project is important. Till 2017, it was always in news. But more recently, as Afghanistan and Pakistan are not in a stable state, and Pakistan, of course, is not willing to help India in any of the respects. So this project is stalled, but still it is important. This is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. So India wants to bring the energy resource directly from Turkmenistan via pipelines, underground pipelines, so that the access to these resources can be very easy. And we can cut on the transport cost as well. Though Pakistan had agreed to this project, okay, Pakistan had agreed to this project, but lately the conditions and the influence of China made sure that Pakistan is not very much willing to support India on these projects. Okay. Yeah, Subham, Kazakhstan is richest source of uranium. Okay. So there is Galkenes gas field in Turkmenistan. This is in Turkmenistan. So from here, this pipeline will come to Herat. Okay. This is in Afghanistan. Then it will move to Kabul. These two places are in Afghanistan. Okay. Sorry, it is not to Kabul, it is to Kandahar. This is Kandahar. The plane, Indian plane that was hijacked. Recently there was a movie as well. And then it will move to Quetta and Multan in Pakistan. This will move to Quetta. It shall move to Multan. And this will finally come to India. Okay. And that is Fazilka. This is India. These two places are in Pakistan. This is the border. This is India. Okay. So this is the framework of the pipeline that is between these countries. Yes, Amit, the hijack related to Kandahar. So this pipeline was proposed. It began in 2015, but not much progress. In fact, it could have benefited all the countries. Pakistan could have achieved revenues plus the source of energy. India was ready to pay for the maintenance of the pipeline. Plus, as it will be beneath the land of Pakistan, we were ready to pay some kind of rentals also. And Pakistan had agreed to this. But unfortunately, the relationship that we share is not very cordial. And we failed to realize this project, which had a good potential for all the countries. So this is the relationship with respect to economy. Now we'll be talking about the military cooperation. Like one thing I have already told you, that Tajikistan, we have an air base which we want to convert into a full-fledged military base. We are in talks with Tajikistan since 2018. And if everything could have been well, we could have established this thing. So now we will be talking about defense aspect. like I said, this is an important region in the neighborhood. We already have an air base here. Okay. This is your Tajikistan. And somewhat here, we have a defense base, air defense base. And this place is called as Aini. Ayni. And what I said, India wants to convert it into a full-fledged military base. It will be first outside India. Full-fledged. This has not been done yet. Okay? If we do this, then it will be our first. Like I initially said, when it was created, (1992 to 1997) during Civil War, as Pak was supporting terror outputs. Okay. So it is not like Pakistan is only disturbing India. It do not enjoy any good relationship with any of the neighbors. None of its direct neighbors have any kind of good relationship with Pakistan. In fact, Pakistan is the only country which do not have a complete favorable relations with any of the countries of the world, barring China at this point in time. And China in itself is like Pakistan. It can flip-flop any moment. And it has to be seen in next few years, China will of course trouble Pakistan more, because now China is convinced that it cannot get its money back, whatever it has invested. Okay. And one more information. Agreement for this was signed in 2002 only. But it was only in 2018 that our NSA, Ajit Doval, visited Tajikistan and looked forward to some of the things that can be done in order to make it happen. Okay? So I hope everybody has noted this down. Do it fast. India has signed agreements related to defense cooperation, okay, with some of the countries in the region. With we have signed defense agreements with these countries: Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So part of this, we have joint exercises. As we have signed the agreement, so of course, we are conducting some of the joint exercises. And these joint exercises are unlike others, where most of the joint exercises, what we see that both the militaries are practicing, right? But in these exercises, most of the time, India only trains their soldiers. One of these, Dustilk, it's going on now only. Okay, it's happening. It is a 10-day program where India will be training the military organization of Uzbekistan. Okay, so we are training these people. There is Khanjar. This is also one of the exercises, Khanjar with Kyrgyzstan. So this is important this year. Okay, you have to understand, whatever is current is more important. So keep on checking such things. And Kazind, this is with Kazakhstan. So there are so many joint exercises that you cannot remember all, right? Hundreds of countries with which India has some sort of relationship. Hundreds of exercises are happening. But not each one is happening annually, nor we give so much importance to each one of those. But some of these which are in news, you should try to focus on those. Because remembering all the names will not be very easy. You'll get confused and you'll lose marks. So don't even try to run for that, okay? So focus only on such things which are in news and which are historically important, which are big, like nuclear supply. It is very, very important. It shall remain important. So you have to focus on such things. Now we'll look at some other relationship. Like the economic relationship, not much is there, but still some of the aspects you need to know. Because as this relationship is still at nascent stage and most of the countries who are buying this region are more rich than India. So of course they have a potential of investing more, they have a potential of influencing more these regions. But of course, when we talk about Russia and China, this region is suspicious of them because previously Russia was having control over these regions, and China, none of the Asian countries trust that country. The only reason people are falling to its one road, one belt initiative is because they want money. They look forward to money that it can give. Okay? So, this relationship is like most important is Kazakhstan. Still, the potential has to be tapped. No significant trade happening. Here, if a question comes, you'll be writing some of the things, whatever you read in newspaper, the economic aspects, because not much of trade is happening. So maybe you'll focus on any of the aspects that you see in news. Okay? And of course, India is focusing on having relations with people, because name of our policy is Connect Central Asia. Okay? So Connect Asia. So of course, people to people connect India is focusing. India is a marvelous destination for education of the Central Asian people. We are providing a scholarship and all, but these aspects are very small aspects. So you have to follow anything which comes in news in order to write such answers. With this exercise was still in news, is still happening with Uzbekistan, so you need to focus on that. Okay? So now the chapters will be finishing these topics very fast. Only reason being because these are some of the relationships that hasn't developed much. It is still in nascent stage. Okay? So note it down. Of course, there was a few articles running on the full military base of India in Tajikistan. There were some apprehensions from the side of some of the regional groupings. So it was in news. So you need to focus on those aspects which appear in news. So that place specifically in Tajikistan becomes more important because it can appear in prelims. Because as far as UPSC is concerned, you must be aware that it focuses on contemporary issues. UPSC is not about current affairs, it is about contemporary affairs. Some of the news items, specifically I'm talking about mains, right? In mains, you'll see many a times their question arises which has some relevance 2 years back, 3 years back. It is because at that point in time it was continuously in news, and now the trails are still running. They still sometimes appear in the news. So contemporary aspects, of course, you have to focus. Yes, Amit, of course. Pratyus, it will take maybe around 15-20 hours more, and we'll be done with IR. we have covered the majority of the parts. Now we are looking at some of the aspects which did not bloom into full-fledged relationships. Though India tried a lot, but some of the times those people were reluctant, or maybe they were too much under the influence of some of our neighbors like China and Pakistan, and they chose not to have a full-fledged relationship with India. Beyond our neighborhood, many of the countries were, of course, part of those groups in the Cold War era, and India was non-aligned. So, of course, it was only after 1991 that we started establishing full-fledged relationship with many of the countries of the world, especially beyond our neighborhood. So we do not have much to talk about these countries. Okay? So things are going to be simple. We'll be looking at some important aspects, and if these countries have any new thing with respect to India in the current scenario, it is in news, then only you'll be writing some of the points. Else, this much of information is lot. This is more than sufficient to tackle the questions. And of course, such small news will probably not even warrant a question, right? But as we are focusing this region, definitely you need to know about it. Now we'll focus on some of the less important relations. Our European counterparts. Of course, European Union as a whole is important. But if we talk about our relations with some of the states out there, it doesn't. Yes, Saksham, by 15th of June, most probably, I'll be starting with a geography optional batch as well. So we can talk about that. I have given you my number, and in case you need some information related to that, you can send me a message. By 15th of June, I'll of course start with optional as well. So now we'll look at India-Germany relation. If you see the newspapers or maybe news items, okay, it is always said that, okay, my number I had already given, but still some of you probably did not note. It is 9958822737. 9958822737. Okay, and if you want to find me over Telegram, one of the groups of mine, you need to search Roasted Geographer. On Telegram, I go by this name. My groups are also having this connect, Roasted Geographer. You can find it over Telegram. I go by this name only on Telegram, and my group also, you can search easily with this name, Telegram and Facebook as well. And on Facebook page, of course, you can find some of the answers written by me. That can certainly help you. In the previous lockdown, I was at home. So I wrote some of the answers after many years, right? But I am sure that that can help you guys. Yeah, so it is, of course, a very good time to start. Devam, we can talk about that. It is not fixed, but it will be very reasonable, okay? So you can see some of the answers, and you can learn how to write answers, right? It will help you in GS and optional as well. So Facebook page, almost many of my students have joined that page and they are benefiting. So of course you can join that page. So I'll talk about this relationship, okay? India and Germany. So, of course, you know, if we talk about these relationships, what is happening? We were non-aligned country, not to the liking of most of the aligned countries. Most of the European countries, they were either with Russia or US. And for that matter, Germany was, of course, not a good friend of ours. In fact, it was anti-India, and you'll see that the relations never ever established well, even though we have a history of recent so many visits. Sazil, of course, I was running a channel and I discontinued with it because I was not having enough time. And the online classes came in vogue now only, right? Most of the time we teachers were focusing on the offline classes. And I was always busy with some of the institutes or the other. So I never much focused on the online thing until and unless everything was closed. Yes, Devam, it shall be like that only. Don't be worried about it. Okay? So I'm talking about this relationship. Since independence, we were cordial with Germany and it were not. Still, Germany doesn't feel like we have matured as a democracy. Still, it doesn't feel like having a relationship. So we'll not be wasting much of our time on this. We'll be finishing it pretty quickly. So, of course, 1947, India was independent. We were open to bilateral relationship. We were always willing. 1961, Germany supported Portuguese rule in Goa. And condemned India for liberating Goa. Okay. So, of course, you can see. Yeah, Pratyus. But these are news based. Such groupings, such relationships are news based. Of course, if there is some major event happening around, we can get a small question on that as well. A 150 word question can be there. Okay. So 1961, again 1971, opposed liberation of Bangladesh. And India's involvement. So, of course, when they were aligned countries, there were no chances that they were going to support India in any case. So, there was always resistance. In 1990, India had tried to establish relations with both East and West Germany. So welcomed its unification. So welcomed its unification. Of course, I'm sure that in world history you must have read this thing that Germany was not a single country for many years. There were two countries, okay? And fall of the Berlin Wall event happened in 1990 when these two countries were united. These two countries were together again. But this grateful gesture was not welcomed by Germany. And in 1998, Germany condemned India's nuclear test. Okay, Dhananjay, then you'll definitely study. This is like unification of Germany is a topic that you'll be reading. That is an important event in the history of Germany. This unification term is often will appear again and again in world history. There's like unification of Italy, unification of Germany. Because these events happened many times. They were separated, co-joined, somebody else captures, fights. So there were a lot of disturbances in these regions, and this is a very interesting part of the history. World history is interesting, but confusing too, and gives you only one question in mains and no questions in prelims. But still, as it is part of your syllabus, you'll be investing your time in world history. Okay? So, but as India is a big market, when Angela Merkel became the supreme power there, when she became the chancellor, there were a string of visits from her, starting 2008, then again in 2013, and again in 2015. But like I had initially said, these countries were only interested in one thing: having trade relations with India, having some investment, and benefiting from that. Okay? Signed many agreements. And she never came alone. She was always accompanied by various ministers, corporate houses, and the world was expecting a lot more than what exists today. The world had an opinion that probably Germany has changed its stance. Germany has changed the stance, and they want to have a good relationship with India in each and every aspect. But those expectations faltered bluntly, and we could not develop a good relationship as such, as was expected. So, though relations were established in all aspects, but relations tried to cover all aspects. All aspects, but still not as was expected. Okay, so high profile visits is not doing much, but still this relationship is a bit important, because March 2021, both countries celebrated 70 years of diplomatic ties. Years of diplomatic ties. So this is the reason that we are giving some space to this thing. Now you need to understand one very important aspect. Yes, Devam. Our constitution makers, of course, had looked at many of the constitutions outside to frame our constitution. So we had adapted some of the things from some of the countries which appeared that will help India. Okay? Like we have seen, now you need to understand why I had written a word, it was not as expected. So why Germany doesn't cooperate with India? Okay, it's important that we find solution. We at least know what is the problem, okay, from the German side, because if we talk about India, we were always willing, because this is a country which is very developed technologically, and we always wanted to have some kind of relationship with each and every country which has a better technological advancement. But Germany, a reluctant country when it comes to developing the relationship with India. And the biggest reason is Germany do not have a policy of dehyphenation. With respect to India and China. Okay, and it is closer to China due to trade and investment. What we have seen in this relationship is, though Angela Merkel even is very famous, because people say that they are very much concerned about climate, they are very concerned about whatever is happening all around the world. But the truth is, Germany is only concerned about the trade benefits that it can fetch from others. If they can provide clean energy, let's say nuclear energy, nuclear technology to some countries, and they can make money, they'll of course be part of that grouping. So Germany is more about trade and investment. So as it doesn't have a dehyphenation policy and it always hyphenates India and China, so we could not develop good relationships. Okay. Now we'll look at the other region. Okay. So the other region being, it always pointed flaws at Indian democracy and never considered India a worthy partner. This is Germany. Germany always pointed fingers at Indian democracy and never considered India a worthy partner. So these people are descendants of Hitler. Of course, you know. They worshipped Hitler. For the time being, when Hitler was there, he made sure that each one residing there, most of the people residing, they were influenced by the ideology of Hitler. Right? The concept of Lebensraum, state being a living entity which has to expand. Right? And Mahatma Gandhi used to write letters to them, like letter to Hitler, that he shouldn't do such atrocities. So of course, Mahatma Gandhi represented India in various ways, our ethos, our values. So they never liked his advices, even though they were defeated, but they knew that India was not in their favor. And since then, some of the events of the past has made sure that they are still not to the liking of India. And the third point that is important is, like I have said, it only focuses on trade and investment. Germany only focuses on trade and investment related relationship. So whenever you are writing an answer on India-Germany relationship, you got to make sure that you are mentioning these 3 points. This is heart and soul of the relationship. Though we'll be talking about economic cooperation and other cooperations, but as I said, it is only and only dictated by trade and investment related things. Economic aspect, of course, it is directly. Other aspects, if you are an engineer or a doctor, you can add to their income, to the growth of Germany, then only you'll be invited. If you do not have any high-end technological skills, you are not a human resource which can help them in a lot of ways, then you'll not be invited in Germany. Okay? But other countries with whom we had seen, they skilled or non-skilled, you are welcome, right? If you can work, you can go there. But Germany do not have such policy. It only wants highly skilled people to go there, and practically they humiliate such people as well. If you are an Indian and you went to work on some of the big companies like maybe Volkswagen or any of those plants, then what they do not allow Indians to enter the place where research and development is being done. They treat Indians not at par with their own citizens, right? So the relationship never ever improved. Now we'll look at some of the aspects directly. I hope everybody has noted this down. Now we'll talk about the economic aspects. This is its concern area, and of course it is the biggest, the largest trading partner of India within Europe. Okay. So these positions change like I had said, so we always write one of the largest trading partner in Europe. Of course, at this point in time, it is number one. But whenever you'll be writing mains, you'll have to verify. So position, writing the position is not important at this juncture. Whenever you are writing the mains, you have to confirm this. Germany is amongst the top 10 investors in India. Because they know that these investment is going to give them a lot of money. They can benefit from that. German automobile industry has manufacturing units in India, as it is the biggest market. Automobile industry, India is the biggest market. Some of the rich countries, they don't buy things from other countries. Like China is more about producing their own. But so they have this automobile industry, the biggest one. Make in India. Metal stand program. Okay. So basically Germany has collaborated with for Make in India, which is called as Make in India Metal Stand program, and its focus is what? Helping German automobile industry to establish in India. So basically, they are not about transferring the technology. They are about establishing their manufacturing units in India and generating a lot of money here and taking it back. Okay? So these are the aspects which are directly benefiting Germany, and so they are really happy to associate with India in these respects. But what India has faced? Delays in coming of the investment. Some of the times, of course, it is because of the Indian regulations only, but many a times they deliberately do this thing. So the relations are, of course, painful. Now the other aspect which is important, hope everybody has noted this down. Is defense. Not much to talk about these relationships between these two countries. A very little scope of small things happening, so you have to focus on such things which appear in news. India-Germany Defense Cooperation Agreement was signed in 2006. But not much is happening. Still, why they have signed this? Germany intends to sell high-end defense equipment to India. It is not like they are coming to our rescue if we are in trouble because of terrorists and all. And because they want some of the good vibes from India, from time to time they condemn cross-border terrorism. Okay? So they are, what Germany is doing? It condemns cross-border terrorism. Okay? But it is not like, Devam, do you think that Dhyan Chand is an element of this relationship? Okay? The hockey match and all. That's not important. Okay? Out of your interest, out of your curiosity, of course, if you want, Google it, read it. But when it comes to this relationship, of course, it is not important. So this is also like, now we'll look at the technological aspect. And again, you'll see that they have something to sell. Okay? As they know that India is a software power, Germany has expertise in hardware. India being a software power needs the hardware. ठीक है, अभी टेक्नोलॉजी में भी वो क्या दे रहे हैं, दे नो दैट ऑफ कोर्स इंडिया is a software power, so software industries, of course, it cannot run without the help of hardware, so they are happy to trade with us. And for doing some of the things, in the year 2008 in Gurugram, erstwhile Gurgaon, that is in Haryana, Indo-German Science and Technology Center was set up. So they are also helping India with developing some of the green urban mobility projects. So all the things that can help German exchequer, that can add to it, is being offered by Germany to India. But when it comes to any other aspects, we do not see Germany being involved with India. Okay? And if we talk about diaspora, again you'll see that they were focusing on the money aspect. As Britain started reducing the number of Indian students, and Indians are known for high quality research work, plus the rich Indians, of course, pay a lot of money to study in the colleges belonging to foreign countries because it is a status symbol. So Germany grabbed that opportunity and they agreed to establish Indo-German Partnership on Higher Education. On higher education. To attract Indian students. ठीक है? Yeah, Abhishek will talk about that. Next we'll talk about that only, but it's now focusing on Germany. I gave you how they are benefiting with the changed policy of UK. These it has also established the Max Muller Bhavans in India. To teach German language. You can write this topic as diaspora and education. We'll combine that. Not many sponsored German students come to India to study. We have less than 1,000 in number. And that too because of the interest of some of the students. It's not like Germany is having a policy of sending their students to study in India. Because we offer some of the courses which can help them. Some of the students come to India to study. Okay? So, not very strong diaspora in India. If we talk about, we do not have a huge number. Whoever are like, who can add to them? Approximately 1,70,000 people. And even out of that, almost 30%, 30,000 are students. So this is the relationship that we have with Germany. And as I said, we do not enjoy a very great rapport. But still, if something is in news, you need to follow that. Okay. Now we'll look at India-Britain relations. Note it down. We'll be looking at that. India-Britain relations. Okay. Okay, Yati, then it's good. We can move forward. The same goes with these. Okay. They had also, they are the reason we were in trouble. So India, of course, do not So there is a lot of confusion when we use the term Britain, United Kingdom. Okay? So what exactly it is, you need to know. United Kingdom, when we call it as United Kingdom, So of course you know, when there is a word united means it cannot be one, right? It cannot be one. So it has to be group of countries. But as they have all decided to stay united, like United States of America, there was a truce between many of the states to stay together. So similarly, here also, some of the states decided to stay together. So what you can do? You can draw a rough sketch so that you can remember whenever using this thing. The shape will help you to remember what exactly it consists of. This is somewhat how it looks. So this is Wales. This region is known as Wales. And this is the region which you called as England. Okay. Then the northern part is Scotland. And it is a disturbed area, Northern Filano or Northern Ireland. It's often said that this is the only area in whole of Europe which do not have characteristics like Europe. Okay? So this is your United Kingdom. Now, if we talk about these three regions, England, Scotland, this is Great Britain, okay? So you need to differentiate between these. And you must be aware of this thing also. When we call it as Britain, then we do not include Scotland. England and Wales together is Britain, traditionally. Okay? But many a times we interchangeably use this. So blue lines are representing Wales plus England is Britain. Wales, England, Scotland is Great Britain. All of these together are United Kingdom. And this is a disturbed area because religion-based infighting is there between Catholic and Protestant Christian community. Okay? So they often say that these people ain't are like these three, and they don't even cooperate with these. Of course, we were a colony of India, and we were not in a condition to deny Britain an opportunity to have relationship with us, because we were not dependent on the things that they were in a position to provide us. They had drained ourselves of our wealth. So we could not deny them the opportunity of having a relationship with us. So since 1947, of course, we have a diplomatic relationship. But as क्या चीज क्लियरली लिख दे सक्षम? दिस इज विजिबल. स्कॉटलैंड, इंग्लैंड, वेल्स, इसको आप लिख लीजिए. आई हैव एक्सप्लेन, राइट? स्कॉटलैंड प्लस इंग्लैंड प्लस वेल्स, और यूनाइटेड किंगडम में सारे हैं. हो तो गया. ग्रेट ब्रिटेन इज स्कॉटलैंड प्लस इंग्लैंड प्लस वेल्स. यूनाइटेड किंगडम इज एवरीथिंग वॉट एवर आई हैव ड्रॉन. यहां ऊपर यूनाइटेड किंगडम लिखा हुआ है ना, ये सारा यूनाइटेड किंगडम है. ठीक है. ब्रिटेन इज इंग्लैंड प्लस वेल्स. Plus, but nowadays, rarely we use the term Britain. It is used in slangs. It is part of United Kingdom. Northern Ireland wants to break free. Scotland wants to break free. All of these want to get out of this association. But as most of the inventions were done by the people living in Scotland, United Kingdom is not favor of doing this, because they exclaim themselves as greatest discoverers and inventors of the world. And if Scotland is separated, they lose their meaning. Okay? There were not many from these two states who have discovered or invented. All the great scientists who are associated with Britain somehow were associated with this region. Okay? But that is not part of our interest. We are more interested in the relationship that has existed between India and Great Britain. And if you want some more information related to that, of course, you'll get in world history chapters. And still some of you, जिसका दिल है कि मानता नहीं हो रहा है, गूगल बाबा से पूछ लेंगे. ठीक है? You can take the help of Google for some extra information which is not important for exam, but you are keen to know. You can do that. ठीक है? अगर हम इस रिलेशनशिप की बात करते हैं तो इट इज नॉट गुड. ठीक है? नन अलाइनमेंट एंड ऑल. सो और ऊपर से ये लोग कैसे हैं कि इनको कोई मतलब नहीं है. मॉनेटरी बेनिफिट है, वर्ल्ड एरेना में बेनिफिट है, तो दिल सपोर्ट, एल्स दे वॉन्ट. सो विल बी फोकसिंग ऑन, you can definitely understand from few of the events why this relationship is not not as good as expected. Okay, we'll directly look at this because not much that has been between these two countries is very, very important, because it was only in 2004 that we talked about a strategic relationship, and still nothing looks like we are into a strategic relationship. Okay, and why this is the case? The first point, UK doesn't act against pro-Khalistani groups. Okay, they freely protest, they speak ill about India. They indirectly support separatist J&K groupings. They are the reason which divided India and Pakistan, and still they indirectly give support. They are not funding these separatists, but of course they always speak in favor of such people, and that irks India. The third, important aspect, they do not give protection many a times. Indian consulates and high commission was vandalized in UK, but they do not provide any protection. They do not give protection to Indian High Commission as per the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And hence, many a times, Indian High Commission was vandalized. These pro-Khalistani and pro-Pakistani groups, they have vandalized many a times Indian embassy. And this Vienna Commission on Diplomatic Relations, it has clearly stated that each and every country has to give protection to the high commissions of the countries who have established relations with the country. But they do not do this thing. And worst of all, they were never ever sorry about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Okay? They never gave an unconditional apology. They talk such things like something bad happened, but there is a convention in the world that for even historical wrongdoings, a country has to feel sorry. Like Germany was apologetic to Jews population, though because of the pressure from the world community. But this Great Britain, when we talk about the United Kingdom, they were never ever sorry about this. They never said that they are sorry for this thing. So the last point is UK never gave an unconditional apology for the brutal there are a lot many things to talk about, right? But if we look at the real reason why India and Britain could never ever establish a good relationship is this. And now we can talk about some of the trivial things that they say is the reason behind not so good relationship between India and Britain. Okay? They talk about the tariff issues, data security issue, or market access. They also talk about such thing. So you can, of course, talk about these as well. And these are all recent issues. If we look at the things that they are doing, vandalizing means destroying. Okay? Vandalizing is destroying. So we can talk about the tariff, market access, and these are the regions which are not allowing these two to sign a free trade agreement. It is not impacting the overall relationship, whatever we are writing in recent issues. But historically, Britain was never in favor of doing good to India. And this is the 3 points that you often see in news. Our newspaper walas, the newspaper agencies, what they do? They talk about such things only. Okay? So, of course, these are problem areas. But such things can only help India and Britain establish a good economic relationship. But what about geopolitical, geocultural wrongdoings? Right? So we could not develop a good relationship with Britain. Yeah, Adi, they also talk about our internal matters like the protest being held by these people, the farmers, CA and all. The smallest event happening in India, they'll start talking about it. So these things, of course, deteriorate the relationship, and it is very, very important that they understand this thing. So we'll be continuing with this discussion only in our next lecture. Yeah, Divam, but of course, COVID situation warranted that thing. We cannot complain that Boris Johnson intentionally cancelled this thing. It will be very unwise of any head of the state to visit some other country when its own country is suffering. They are responsible people. They ain't are like our politicians. Our politicians will let people die and focus on only political events. Even when the Second World War was going on, when the tragedy struck most part of the world, they united and allowed a minority political party to rule the country. The biggest party did not choose its own PM. Do you think that India will do any of that with the kind of politicians we have? We cannot expect such things from it. Will take hundreds of years before we start producing such leaders who think of nation first and not of their political ambitions and political parties. Avtar will be talking about that strategic partnership agreement, but this was just a small event that happened in 2004. Nothing much happened after that. So you need to remember, if you want, you can write a strategic partnership happened in 2004. But until and unless it is reflected, we cannot say or write much about it. You can write that, or maybe I'll help you with this, okay, tomorrow. Okay, Yati, it's great that you understood everything. It's wonderful that my messages are clear to you. Whatever I'm teaching is reaching out to you. And it is the sole purpose of this interactive sessions as well. So we'll continue with this part tomorrow. And I want you to go through these things, revise the way I had suggested. Keep reading the things, keep looking at the things, try to frame some of the answers, even if you are not in a position to write whole answers. These are the only small things with, if you do consistently, will make sure that you qualify the exam with a top rank. And as this is a time when you have to stay very, very focused, because maybe each one of you are hearing some of the news that is not very good because of the COVID situation. So keep yourself calm, stay pacific, and stay focused on your goal. And 1 year of consistency will definitely make sure that you get to a top rank. And this is should be your whole purpose. 1 year, even 8-9 months, full-fledged preparation, full focus will help you get it through. Do not leave anything. Just read everything. Even some of you I know will be appearing in 2023. But at least read the things consistently every day. Revise it so many times that when you start writing, the knowledge starts reflecting. Okay? So have a great time. And we are done with the class. Take some rest, have food, and then study. Good afternoon.